In this week's video, I want to talk about how different sensor sizes can affect your photography. I think this will be of particular interest if you're thinking of buying a new camera, or maybe you're thinking of upgrading your existing camera. Welcome to the Photo Genius channel. Hi, Paul here from Photo Genius. Welcome to my channel where I post regular photography tutorials, all designed to help you get more from your digital camera so you can take better photos. If you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Now this week we're taking a look at the key differences as well as the pros and cons between cameras that use what is called a full frame sensor versus cameras that use the smaller APS-C sensor. There's a number of different sensor sizes available, including medium format, full frame, APS-C, micro 4/3, and of course we can't ignore the camera that fits in your pocket. And of course in a smartphone the sensor size is very small. Now on this video I want to concentrate on the two most popular sensor formats, APS-C and full frame. APS stands for Advanced Photo System, a now discontinued film that was available in three formats: high definition, classic and panorama. The size and ratio of the classic format closely matches that of cropped sensor cameras, and that is why the term APS-C has become standard. Now what exactly does full frame mean? Well, here is a full frame sensor taken from a Nikon camera. The size of the sensor is equal to the size of a 35mm film negative, which for most was the standard film choice due to popularity. Any sensor that is larger is called medium format, and smaller sensors are collectively called cropped sensors. This includes the popular APS-C format as well as micro 4/3. Now one of the main advantages that full frame sensors have over their smaller counterparts is light capture. And remember, photography is after all the art of capturing light. You'll notice better performance, particularly in low light situations. You'll notice a reduction in digital noise, particularly if you're increasing the ISO. And finally, the sensor will be able to capture a wider dynamic range. A larger sensor may also mean an increase in resolution. This is why photographers that like to print their photos, like landscape photographers for example, who absolutely crave detail, love full frame sensor cameras. But a larger sensor doesn't always mean more megapixels. For example, here we have a Canon R6 Mark II and a Canon R10, and it's clear to see which is the full frame and which is the cropped sensor camera. Now whilst the R6 has a larger sensor, both cameras are 24 megapixels, so that means the largest resolution image from both cameras is the same, 6000 by 4000 pixels. So in this case, what advantage does the bigger sensor have? Well, a larger sensor means more space, so the pixels themselves can be larger, and larger pixels capture more light, giving a cleaner image with less digital noise. Also, if you're a big fan of blurry backgrounds and bokeh, it's also worth knowing that full frame sensor cameras will give you a more narrow and shallow depth of field compared to cameras using smaller sensors. Now there is one very important thing that can put full frame cameras at a slight disadvantage compared to smaller sensor cameras, and this is when using a telephoto lens. So if you're the type of photographer who often uses a longer lens to get closer to the subject, I guess obvious subjects would be sports and wildlife, then this is something you need to consider very carefully. When taking a photo, light passes through the lens and is recorded by the sensor. Now the light is projected into the camera as a circular image, and as you can see is actually inverted. But let's turn it around to simplify things. Now only the light that reaches the sensor is recorded by the camera, and as you can see the full frame sensor captures a larger area. When we compare the images side by side, you can see in the image recorded by the smaller APS-C sensor, the subject appears closer simply because the image is cropped, hence the term cropped sensor. Now this can actually be an advantage if your subject is further away. If you would like to learn more about the crop factor, I've made a video all about it. You'll find a link at the end of this video. So whilst when using a full frame sensor camera you may not be able to get as close to the action, if you're using a wide lens, that's when you'll see the benefit. Because with full frame sensor cameras there is of course no crop, and that means the full frame can capture the big picture. Now, of course, another thing we can't ignore is the physical size difference between an APS-C camera and a full frame camera, as well as the difference in cost. Now, what I would say on this is I am noticing that the price gap between full frame and crop sensor cameras is getting smaller. Now, in terms of physical size, of course, with the switch from DSLR over to mirrorless cameras, generally speaking, aside from some of the professional cameras, most of the cameras are getting smaller, which is great for people that want to travel. Check out the Sony A7C. This is a really great camera that has a full frame sensor in a tiny compact body. Cameras using the smaller APS-C sensor are by far the most popular, partly due to price and also the range of cameras on offer from the likes of Canon, Nikon, Fujifilm, Sony, and so on. When I first started taking photos as a kid, I was using a film camera. I switched to digital in 2002, and I've mostly shot with APS-C sensor cameras. That was until 2019 when I bought my Nikon Z6, which was my first full frame sensor camera. Now, I love that camera, but I still also shoot with APS-C cameras. At the moment, I'm using the Nikon ZFC to record this video. That's a great camera. My most recent purchase was this. This is the Fujifilm X100V. Again, a cropped sensor camera. Now, although a camera using a smaller APS-C size sensor may not outperform a full frame sensor camera, particularly in low light situations, I've proved time and time again on this channel that you can take amazing photos with just about any camera, providing you know what you're doing. It's more about technique than the gear. My top tip is to keep the ISO low where possible. For me, the biggest advantage that an APS-C sensor has over the full frame sensor is when using a telephoto lens. I talked about it earlier in the video. That extra reach is really cool. All the images you're seeing here were shot using APS-C sensor cameras. This is the reason why some pro photographers actually carry an APS-C sensor camera as well as a full frame camera, because it just gives them more options and a wider focal range to play with. So I really hope you've enjoyed this week's video. Now, if you'd like to learn more on this subject, I definitely recommend watching my video on the crop factor next. All you got to do is click just here. If you did enjoy the video and you've learned something, please consider giving it a thumbs up, because it does help the channel grow and it helps the videos get noticed. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, consider subscribing. New videos every single week. And that's about it, other than to say thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you again sometime soon. See ya. Bye.